So, Conor McGregor, in the current time and space right now of, I would say maybe June 13th, which is today, or I'm sorry, maybe the 14th, rather, has 48 hours. So, somewhere in the time of June 13th to June 14th, he has 48 hours to report to USADA. And what that means is that he has to be in the USADA pool in order for him to qualify to be able to fight this year. Otherwise, Michael Chandler or Conor McGregor himself is going to walk out of the fight and just not do the fight at all. So the issue with that is the integrity that the UFC has to try to maintain in terms of trying to look like a formidable organization that cares about protocols in terms of drug testing, in terms of being in the pool of USADA and being tested at a certain amount of times before a contest. And if he's not going to do that and is given special treatments, then it's just going to break the ethos and the culture of the UFC in terms of everything that they're trying to build of fairness, in terms of meritocracy, which we know doesn't truly exist in the realm of the UFC. So that's what Conor McGregor has going on right now in terms of what he has to do in order for him to get this fight with Michael Chandler. Otherwise, if he can't fight in 2023, Michael Chandler may just move on. So that's what we have going on right now with Conor McGregor and the Michael Chandler fight. Now, the TUF series is still going to go on. Obviously, they've already filmed it. We already have a winner that is not yet announced because these fights have already happened. So there's no use in trying to stop the Ultimate Fighter altogether. But now, you got to think, what does this mean for the bottom dollar of the UFC? They're going to miss out on a couple of millions based on the fact that, well, this is 2023 and Conor McGregor hasn't fought in this year. He hasn't fought in 22. Has only fought in 21 against Dustin Poirier, and then that was it. So they're going to miss out on a lot of cash with Conor McGregor. Now, speaking of athletes missing out on a lot of cash, I want to tell you guys, I think it's a really bad idea for Jon Jones to get into a boxing ring. I know there's talks of him getting into a boxing ring, and I know that Dana White is trying to bait Tyson Fury into the UFC and into the UFC cage and into the competition of MMA, in contrast to a lot of boxers that would just rather see these MMA guys come into the boxing ring and compete under those rules. Now, the reason why I think that it's such a bad idea for Jon Jones to compete in boxing is because I honestly think that it could potentially ruin his career. And what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people didn't really take into consideration how much the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight affected Conor in his career in terms of being able to take a shot. Now, you've seen that he got finished by Dustin Poirier. You also saw in the Khabib fight that not only did he get finished by getting choked at the end of the fight, he also got knocked down with an overhand right, in which that very few people can actually do to Conor McGregor prior to the Floyd Mayweather fight. So one has to assume that you got to pick one or the other, right? If you're going to be a mixed martial arts fighter where you're going to use your elbows, you're going to use your knees, you're going to use your punches, your kicks, and your spinning back attacks and takedowns and joint locks and all these submission holds and all these grappling maneuvers, right? And that's what you do. That's what you train for. Go ahead and continue to do that, because if you're going to jump into the boxing ring where you're going to be limited with the weapons that you have, it can be a real safety issue in terms of how you're going to defend yourself. Now, fighting and combat is all about being able to defend yourself and being able to use all the weapons necessary to win. So jumping into a situation like a boxing ring where you're not a boxer, you're a high-level mixed martial arts fighter, it's just not going to be conducive to your career when you're used to fighting people in the cage, when you're used to using boxing. Yes, you use boxing in a mixed martial arts scenario, but you use it by opening up with kicks, using the distance within the kicks, using the threat of takedowns to affect that person's energy bar. So this is the things that you have to consider when you're a high-level mixed martial artist jumping into the boxing ring. Also, another thing you got to take into consideration is the reputation that Jon is going to suffer from if he were to take this loss. Because let's face it, we would give him credit for being a tough individual, taking on a challenge in a boxing ring, to which is not something that a lot of MMA fighters will do, especially at a high level. Yes, there's a lot of them that have done it in their latter careers or in the end of their roads, but the reality is that top level guys right now that are competing in MMA are just not going to do that, for the same reason why you'll never see Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford jump into an MMA cage. Maybe with the exception of Terrence Crawford, considering that he has a wrestling background and how that can be really helpful to him in those tools that he can use in the cage, and also his high-level boxing pedigree that he has. But for the majority of high-level boxers, they're just not going to do that. And for the majority of high-level mixed martial artists, it's just not something they're going to do. Nonetheless, it's just one of those things where stick to what you know, right? Or stay in your lane, as they say. Now, it's not something that a lot of people like to hear, especially if you're one of those go-getters and you like to try new things and you like to try new ventures. But I guarantee you, if Jon Jones was to not step into the boxing ring, it would further his career if he were to step into the boxing ring. Because he's going to get hurt. He's not going to be able to use the weapons that he normally has, the elbows, the leg kicks, the ground attacks, the ground and pound. Being able to finish a guy on the ground, being able to take the guy to the ground. He's not going to be able to do that in the boxing ring. So it's better to stick to what you know, especially when you are at the caliber of Jon Jones and Tyson Fury. Now, on the reverse side of that, if Tyson Fury was to jump into the the MMA cage, how will that affect his career? Probably in a very negative way, right? He's going to get hurt. His knees are going to get buckled. He's going to have injuries in his joints that he never had before. And that's just the reality of this whole situation of crossover fights. So better to stick to what you know.